Hello, Mr. Chair. We're now streaming live online.
We'll get this thing kicked off. I'm going to call the Committee of the Whole meeting Monday, December 6th, 2021 to order at 6:30. And before we commence, I'd just like to acknowledge that we acknowledge with respect that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen speaking people. And we are honored to have this opportunity to build strong working relationships with the people of the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. Okay, looking for a motion to approve the agenda, near term, long term, and Committee of the Whole agenda this evening. Councillor Baxter.
Chair Kobayashi.
Sorry, am I missing something?
Administration had been advised by the applicant of item 5.3 on the agenda that they are withdrawing their application. And so that item has been, our administration are recommending is removed from the agenda.
Correct. So Councillor Baxter, would you like to make the motion of removing item 5.3? Thank you very much. Any discussion? Mayor Martin.
Hey, thank you. Sorry, you just put me on. There you go. Thank you. Could just looking at the long-term agenda or near-term agenda, can staff please comment on last time I brought it up around council reimbursement? I don't see it. I thought it was going to be on the December 13th agenda, and I don't see that there.
Through the chair, that was added to the long-term agenda.
Okay, so I should see it on the long-term.
Correct.
Okay, in what quarter am I looking at?
Your worship's in Q1 2022, the last item, page 14 of 209 of the agenda, last page of the long-term agenda.
I'm sorry, what page was that again? I'm sorry.
14 of 209.
14, thank you. 14. So, okay, so we're not doing it Q4. I thought I was under the impression that we were starting this in Q4 of this term, but we're pushing it now.
So, it will be fundamentally complete in Q1 of 2022. It may begin in the fourth quarter of 2021.
Oh, okay. So these thank you. So just to be clear, the long-term agenda, short-term agenda, these are when these things are completed, not when they're beginning in the agenda.
It is when we endeavor to have them complete.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, on that note, I'll just call the question. Any opposed to the adoption of the agenda? Seeing none, I shall proceed. Before I get into the adoption of the minutes, I just thought I'd do chairman remarks. It's not on the agenda, but privileged platform here. So I just want to, we, most of council, those that don't work, got to attend the grand opening of reopening of the Juan de Fuca Arena and the childcare facility at West Shore Parks and Rec. It was a pretty phenomenal event. It was attended by 2 ministers from the province of British Columbia. I was absolutely impressed. They actually toured the facilities for us and got to go down, take a look at the facilities, the new rink. And just if you haven't gone down there to take a look, it's pretty phenomenal. I was so impressed. I can tell you, it was beyond my expectations. So I just thought I'd make that comment and just like to thank most of council that was able to attend. We were out there in force. It was really good. Thank you very much. Okay, on that note, I'm just going to move to the adoption of the minutes. Can I get a motion to adopt the minutes of Committee of the Whole from November 15th? Councillor Parkinson, any discussions, questions, any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Any opposed? And it's unanimous. Okay. Item 4, public participation. We had 1 or 2 speakers. They were specifically going to talk to item 5.3, which is not on the agenda now, so they're no longer here. Is there anyone else that's on the phone or anything like that?
No, there's no one else registered to speak. Thank you.
Okay, so I won't have to go through all the other stuff. So we're moving right along. Item 5, 5.1. It's the project update on the 2021 Park Management Plans Phase 2. That's Colwood Creek Park, Lookout Lake Park, and Ocean View Park. And if I can call on Jill Collinson to introduce the topic. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm coming at you virtually here. So as you know, we've been working through park management planning processes for the parks of Colwood Creek, Lookout Lake, and Ocean View Park. In September, we offered an overview of Phase 1, which was focused primarily on analysis and engagement. And tonight we're back with a summary of Phase 2, which concentrated on draft directions and development for each of the park's management plan. So during Phase 2, which ran from October till now, draft park vision, goals, conceptual plans, and recommendations were shared with the community for review and input. Lots of feedback was received, and a summary of each park's Phase 2 engagement is included as an appendices of this evening's briefing. I'll now virtually turn it over to Vanessa Walton from Lanark Consultants, who's been supporting an interdepartment project team on this project for an overview. Vanessa?
Thanks, Jill, and good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm happy to be back joining you again to share an update on the park management plans process. So I'll just go ahead and share my screen here. Is everyone seeing that okay?
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Oops, sorry, there we go. So I'll begin with a brief overview of the project as a refresher. So the majority of my presentation, excuse me, I'm 1 slide in advance. Gotta love the PowerPoint animations throwing you off. So here we go. So the project process began early in the summer in August and July with Phase 1. And as Jill mentioned, we're focusing on Phase 2 as part of this update. So focusing on draft directions and engagement summaries. And then later in the presentation, I'll tell you a little bit about what's happening coming up here in Phase 3. So as a reminder of where we're at in the overall process, this diagram is a timeline that shows the 3 key phases. So Phase 1 occurred during July and August and was focused on site analysis and ideas exploration. And then Phase 2 occurred from September into early November, with the community engagement phase running for the month of October into early November. And we're currently embarking on Phase 3, in which we are taking all the feedback we received during Phase 2 to refine and finalize the park management plans. And we'll provide an update with you again in January to really share the draft plans. And then following that, there will be another public referral phase. So on the following slides, I'll summarize the Phase 2 highlights. The outreach for Phase 2 was quite similar to Phase 1. So you might remember we used a mix of digital and print methods to inform a wide cross-section of the community. So outreach tools included project webpage and Let's Talk Colwood page updates, a social media campaign, and e-notification distribution. Direct stakeholder referrals and large-scale posters were posted in the parks, as well as postcards were distributed at the park pop-ups to advertise ongoing and upcoming opportunities. So phase 2 engagement opportunities, we tried to really include a mix of online and in-person, mostly outdoor activities, just recognizing that there might still be some varying levels of community comfort with engaging in person. So options were made available to either meet with city staff in person or the project team online. So the main engagement activities included 3 components, which were pop-up events in each park. Paper and online input questionnaires were available, and an online community workshop was also held on Zoom in late October to explore the draft directions. So we'll start with an update on Colwood Creek Park. During phase 2, we heard from about 204 participants in the survey, which was great. We had about a similar number in phase 1, so nice to see people back again quickly for phase 2. We had about 150 at the pop-up events and 5 attended the online workshop. We developed a draft vision statement to share with the community and receive their feedback. So a vision statement is really meant to describe a long-term future for the park. It's intended to be aspirational and help guide future planning decisions. So the working vision statement we shared with the public was Colwood Creek Park is a place for people to spend a day with a blend of nature, open space, and activity. It provides opportunities for all throughout the year, from families to nature lovers to furry friends. A thriving and protected creek corridor flows through, connecting together spaces for recreation and relaxation. And this was fairly well supported from the public with a bit of wordsmithing. And of course, they wanted more emphasis on dogs and off-leash dog areas. So we'll be looking to revise that as part of phase 3. We also developed a series of guiding principles, and these are intended to support the realization of the vision by providing a framework for future projects within the park. The draft guiding principles for Colwood Creek Park were to protect and restore natural areas and riparian ecosystems, improve connectivity and accessibility, and upgrade and diversify recreational amenities. So you might remember these are also directly connected to the guiding principles that were developed as part of the Parks and Rec Master Plan. So really feeding off of those, but providing a framework that's specific for Colwood Creek Park. And these were generally well supported by the community. As an initial step towards realizing the vision, we developed a draft concept plan to share with the public. And the concept plan was really intended to be a working document. We wanted to make it feel like a draft diagram so that the public kind of had the sense that their input could be made and received and used to adjust the direction still in phase 3. So suggested improvements included an improved and upgraded pathway connection to the Galloping Goose Trail here at the north. Should connect to a new crosswalk at Sunridge Valley Drive. And then some upgraded park entries, providing opportunities for wayfinding signage and furnishings and bike parking where appropriate. There would be some rerouting of the path connections on the Sunridge Valley Drive side to accommodate new programmatic amenities, as well as to address some of the seasonal flooding that tends to occur around this wetland area. You'll see that this new path allows for a larger playground and splash pad area, so almost doubling the existing area and size. I'm really thinking about integrating a wider range of fixtures for a larger range of mobilities and abilities. Addition of a washroom and building, change room building, and picnic area, and then improved lawn areas in this area of the park as well. So you can imagine they could potentially accommodate more programming, things like exercise classes in the park, and facilitate picnicking and things like that. And then the big move is because of the activation of this zone, we're looking at changing the Sunridge Valley Drive side to really be a dogs on leash area. And the transition point would then happen at the new footbridge connection so that you would be on leash and then heading into off leash on the Cecil Blog Drive side. And we're really thinking of the off-leash areas on Cecil Blog Drive side being quite improved. So taking what we heard from the community in phase 1 and integrating things like benches, picnic areas, shade trees, And one thing we've had a lot of requests for is a water connection on this side of the park, both a drinking connection for humans and pups, and potentially even water for dogs to play in to alleviate some of the desire to get into the creek. Since we last met, we've also been working with a certified biologist to identify potential strategies for protecting and restoring Colwood Creek. So the main change you can see here being an increase to the riparian buffer. So expanding that and adding this dashed line indicates some habitat fencing, really to try to separate the dog off leash zone from the natural areas. And within these natural areas, we'd be looking at a number of strategies. So environmental restoration could involve things like invasive species removal, native plant restoration, soil amendments, and restoring and renaturalizing some of the creek areas. And all of that would happen following more detailed planning, working with a certified biologist. This blue area represents a stormwater management area, which we would be reserving for kind of future works by the city of Colwood. And one of the things we'll really be exploring further in phase 3 is the addition of potentially other smaller scale stormwater management strategies throughout the park. That was one thing we heard from the public that was really well supported. Veterans Memorial Parkway edge would be left pretty passive the way that it is currently, with opportunity for some path improvements, as well as, again, that upgraded park entry, some shade trees along here and benches, and then looking to kind of protect and restore some of these more naturalized areas as a buffer to the road. So what we heard following review of the draft plan was the participants really supported the new washroom and change room building. That was the top most supported amenity, followed by drainage improvements, and other things that were also strongly supported were new picnic areas, benches and shade trees, expanding the playground and splash pad, and restoration of the natural areas, as well as improvements to this existing path over to the Galloping Goose. We had quite a few respondents mention that they felt unsafe on this trail connection, especially in the evening hours. There were some mixed feelings, and opinions were a bit mixed on the on-leash designation at Sunridge Valley Drive. Many park users really supported this direction. Some felt that too much off-leash area had been taken away, although those who are maybe not necessarily supportive did note that they kind of got it and felt it was justified and were in favor of expanding areas for kids and families. So as a whole, we really felt the feedback was pretty balanced for this recommendation, especially compared to some other park management plan processes with off-leash dog areas. Participants were also a bit mixed on the extent and type of fencing shown. So some felt that the split rail fence may not be enough to keep dogs out of the creek. So that's something we'll be thinking about further in phase 3. Some concerns again about the reduction in size to the dog off leash area. The expansion of the riparian buffer was well supported, but still some feelings of discontent about the overall area potentially being reduced. So we'll really be looking at making that a lot more desirable with additional amenities to kind of balance that. Some concerns about on-leash enforcement, maybe that rules wouldn't necessarily be followed unless further enforcement measures or signage were implemented. And then some concerns about extent of improvements. Other ideas that we didn't necessarily put forth but were shared by the public were, again, that water connection as part of the dog off-leash zone on Cecil Blog, integration of some natural elements within the dog areas to kind of provide the experience of being near the creek without having to do that, and have kind of the impacts on habitat zones. And then some respondents shared ideas about potentially Sunridge being divided so that there were sort of seasonal restrictions, or a portion of it could be on leash. So lots of ideas about that portion of the park. And then we did actually hear in phase 2 more desire for pickleball again. So that's something we'll be thinking about further in phase 3. So moving forward onto Lookout Lake, we had 34 survey participants, about 50 at the park pop-up, and 2 online workshop participants. So a small group at the online workshop, but both were really sort of tapped into the community. So even though it was a smaller group, I actually found the conversations to be really worthwhile to our process. Draft vision statement for Lookout Lake was high up on Triangle Mountain. Lookout Lake Park is a peaceful and safe spot to experience nature. The park supports a healthy diversity of plant species and urban wildlife while offering opportunities for all to take a walk in the forest, dip in the lake, or catch a fish. So again, this was generally pretty well supported with some wording suggestions. Draft guiding principles were Celebrate the park's quiet atmosphere and rustic character, improve connectivity and accessibility, and protect and enhance natural areas, including the lake and forest. And these are, again, quite well supported with the desire for kind of further expansion of them. So some examples provided as part of the management plan. So I'll take you through the draft concept plan quickly for Lookout Lake Park. Some of the suggested improvements were upgrades to the stair connections at Blue Sky Place and Sun Estates, specifically Sun Estates, potentially addition of a handrail and some repair work needed. Again, upgrades to the park entries, minor upgrades to the existing nature trail, thinking about regrading and easing some of the slopes where it connects into the dam, improvements and repair and fixing of the existing boardwalks. Again, we really heard that in phase 1 and again in phase 2 that the park's rustic character and quiet atmosphere is so cherished. So a lot of these would be minor improvements, not necessarily changing the feel of the nature trail, but upgrading for safety. And then looking at formalizing the existing connection up to Sun Heights. We'd be looking all of these green zones again at protecting and really restoring the natural areas, with removal of invasive species and some revegetation. And then looking at integrating a new washroom and change room building. This would be a small scale modular building, pit toilet or composting toilet, and some additional furnishings, again, with the limitation that we wouldn't be doing any permanent mounting to the dam. And then we also heard it would be important to upgrade access to the water access area. Because we can't sort of manipulate the dam slope, we'd be looking at likely doing that perhaps on the east side here. So top supported improvement was actually revegetation of the areas next to the dam. Again, not being able to change the dam surface, this would be kind of low growing species, wildflowers and whatnot along the sides. Participants also supported minor trail improvements, restoration of the natural areas, addition of the washroom building, and some improvements to the furnishings and water access, as well as small scale nature play. Mixed feelings about park furnishings. I think people just feel like people will bring their beach chairs and whatnot to the park. So maybe too much new intervention isn't needed. And again, yeah, concerned about extensive improvements. So really trying to retain the quiet character that exists. And some actually concerned about too many improvements causing more and more increased usage and that having stresses on the environment as well as parking. Environmental impacts continue to be a concern in phase 2. Everything from kind of increased usage to impacts on the riparian areas, as well as even thoughts about fire in the forested zones. Some ideas were shared about fishing, so that's something we'll be looking into further, in phase 3. And then again, less is more, really prioritizing the most important improvements as part of the plan and maintaining the natural atmosphere and beautiful simplicity of the park the way that it is. Ocean View, we heard 24 survey participants, 40 at the pop-up event, and 4 online workshop participants. So again, smaller numbers with this one. Could be because we were kind of hot on the heels of the phase 1 engagement, but again, my experience was that sort of brought an opportunity for deeper conversations. The vision statement for Ocean View is Ocean View Park is a welcoming and accessible place for all to gather and play against a backdrop of towering firs and cedars. Meandering forest trails provide places to relax, learn, and immerse oneself in a pocket of nature in the middle of the city. So general support for this, some thought middle of the city felt a bit too urban, so we might be looking to change that a bit. Draft guiding principles are to integrate fun opportunities for all to enjoy, celebrate the park's natural areas and character, and improve access and connectivity. So I'll take you through the suggested improvements for Ocean View Park. We'd be looking at doing some minor upgrades to the existing trail network, which is really well loved within the park. So just things like benches and additional garbage receptacles, some new pathways to connect to entries and between key areas. And again, upgrades to the park entries just to integrate potentially some trail signage or furnishings. And then really reserving most of the park to protect and restore the natural areas. In the area at the Hope Road and Marianne Crescent kind of corner would be where most of the change would be occurring. So we'd be looking at integrating a new washroom building as well as some picnic areas. and upgrading the play area to expand and provide kind of a greater range of accessible features, and some integration of nature play areas along the forest edge and perhaps within the forest as well. Also looking at upgrades to the sport court, potentially some shorter term minor improvements, and then a longer term strategy to convert to multi-sport, as well as an outdoor classroom space within the existing cleared zone within the forest. So top supported improvements were maintaining the existing trail network, again, really well loved, as well as some of the new trail linkages and protecting the forested zones. Integration of pollinator gardens in some of the sunnier areas of the park, and some of the picnic shelters and benches, as well as upgrades to the play area and park entries. Mixed feelings about the washroom building a little bit, which was really different from phase one, where this was the top supported amenity. And I think that was mostly people were in favor, but there were kind of a handful of those who weren't. And I think that could have been perhaps reacting more so to the location, style, or size of the washroom rather than it actually being there itself. Some have mixed feelings about upgrades to the sport court area. I think that'll be happening either way, but just kind of trying to determine whether a phased or scaled back approach may be warranted. And then again, longer term improvements. And then the outdoor classroom space did receive mixed feedback in the online input questionnaire, but was pretty well supported on the in-person events. So more to come in phase 3 on that one. Concerns about the extent of improvements, which I actually really appreciated those comments, mostly just speaking to kind of over programming of this zone and how there isn't a lot of open lawn space in this neighborhood. So kind of keeping it simple and maintaining some of that flexible space. And then ongoing concerns about parking. Participants shared ideas about arts and cultural opportunities, really thinking about opportunities for Indigenous values and storytelling in both the vision statement and park elements potentially. And then again, retaining some more flexible space within the park. So the key takeaway from all of these highlights is that the community feedback received in phase 2 will be incorporated into our efforts to refine directions in phase 3. And to close, here's an overview of the next steps and key timelines. So firstly, immediate next step is we're working on draft plan development, which is currently underway and ongoing through December. And then the draft management plans will be shared with the council again in early 2022. And following that, they'll be off for public referral and review prior to finalization. So thank you again for your time this evening. We're really happy to be supporting this process with the community in Colwood and to continue to develop the vision for these 3 wonderful parks. Thanks.
To Committee of the Whole Committee at this point in time for questions and comments. Mayor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple questions for you. First, in regards to Lookout Lake, I appreciate the comments in regards to the fish, but I would just, as we work towards phase 3, just the interaction between fisher people and swimmers and other people who are interacting there. I just don't want to end up creating a conflict between those 2 groups, and just making sure that it's at least spoken about within the planning process would be great. The other thing I'm also interested in is that Lookout Lake doesn't seem to have a significant number of parking spots, and I'm just curious as we move into phase 3 if we could just make sure that we address the question of, is there enough parking, or does the neighborhood feel as that there's parking issues? And then the third issue that I would just, again, in phase 3, to just so that I have some comfort, is the people who live surrounding the lake have commented to me at times that summertime can be hard because the voices resonate throughout the lake, and that people don't actually enjoy the lake being used. And so I would just would like to just ensure that the staff are at least looking at that. In regards to Ocean View, I would as well, when we come back in phase 3, and you did mention it a little bit, is just regard basketball and the noise, the basketball, and is that an issue for the neighborhood or not? Because that will help us make a determination if we should invest more into there or not. And then the final thing was just celebrating the fact that you mentioned the pollinators. The Victoria Horticultural Society, when they did the 100 trees planting, they were talking to me about pollinating and pollinator gardens and how significant a role that they can play within our community. So love that you're addressing that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mayor Martin.
And I guess those.
Not a problem. The chair recognizes Councillor Logan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Fantastic presentation. I really appreciate it. And I can tell you that people at least in the Colwood Creek area are quite jazzed about the recommendations. There's not a day I go through that park and not receive some feedback, and it's been very, very positive. A couple of questions I have is, and I'm not sure in terms of what level of detail this plan gets into, but I'm looking at discussions about design of furniture for parks and utilizing it as an opportunity to be a point of interest, architecturally unique, almost like an art piece type of deal for parks. So would we talk about that maybe in phase 3? And I guess my second question would be, will we be kind of getting down to the detail in terms of width of trail and trail surfacing? And I go back to Colwood Creek Park as an example, which is really, whether we like it or not, is more of a regional park on the West Shore because of its size. So thinking of wider trails and perhaps even changing up the surface of that trail so it can be plowed during inclement weather, so it remains accessible. That type of thing. So when would we have those conversations? Would it be outside of this or during this process? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you care to respond to that, Vanessa? Or
I'll jump in, and Jill, please feel free to add or interrupt. So typically with park management plans, we'll provide kind of a range of inspiration options for furnishings based on kind of what feels like a good fit for the park. So for Colwood Creek, I can imagine something that would still feel like park related in terms of character, but perhaps a little bit more urban than something like Lookout Lake. So we don't usually typically get to the level of detail of providing kind of a cut sheet or something like that. But of course, if that's a desire from the city, we're happy to do so. So that's probably something we can work with Jill to flesh out further in phase 3. In terms of trails, yeah, I think that's a really important component, and something that we've heard time and time again as part of this process is just how well loved the trail and walking loop is as part of Colwood Creek Park. So I think we'd likely be putting together kind of a circulation plan that would provide ranges of widths as well as suggested surfaces for the areas within the park. And I guess kind of related to that, our plan diagram for phase 2 was, as I mentioned, intended to be quite diagrammatic so that it felt like there was still room to kind of comment from the community. But in phase 3, I think you'll find what we'll be generating is a much more illustrative plan to kind of give you a better sense of scale and feel of some of the spaces.
thanks very much, Vanessa. Chair recognizes Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll just echo the rest. Great work. It's really exciting to see this progress like this. Can you coach me on fencing for off-leash dog areas? A, is it always required? B, how solid do we make it? And I guess I'm thinking, just because I have a couple of neighbors who actually are scared of dogs, there's people like that. So the idea of dogs running free and having a place to roam is fantastic, but there's other people who would be freaked out by that a little bit. So, what kind of, we don't want a solid wall, but if you could coach me a little bit, I'd appreciate that.
Hey, Vanessa, I'll offer the first comment here and then let you give some examples. So there's 2 types of general fencing in which have been brought up specifically at Colwood Creek related to this. One is like a split rail cedar style fence that is intended to be more of a visual barrier to provide the behavioral change suggestion for people dogs, though it doesn't really provide that secure cage style of feeling. So right now, the plan proposes that the Cecil blog side is off leash, and there is no fencing other than the split rail cedar proposed. What did come up in some conversation that Vanessa highlighted during her presentation is having an enclosed, more of an enclosed area with a different type of fencing, perhaps. So what that may or could look like, I will turn over to Vanessa to provide some examples and some more detail as to what they've experienced in their past plans in other regions.
Thanks, Jill. Yeah, so just to kind of summarize what Jill said, the approach was sort of to fence the habitat areas and keep the off-leash area open that we presented as part of phase 2. Potentially what we heard from some public was that there would be comfort with there being a more continuous, almost the reverse of that approach. So a more continuous fencing around the core off-leash area and thus leaving kind of the riparian buffers open to the adjacent trails and whatnot. If we are kind of continuing with the strategy where we'd be fencing the riparian zones, what has worked well in past has been to do the split rail fence in kind of the transition areas. So almost as a transition as you'd be heading towards the bridges or towards the on-leash zone, where there's direct adjacency and more of a barrier needed. We've used a combination of strategies, so often transitioning more to a wood post and rail fence that would have kind of a welded wire mesh infill if there was a desire for it to be a more continuous buffer. I mean, obviously the other option, which is cost effective and easy to implement, is chain link, but that has a little bit more of a harsh feel and may not mesh so well with kind of the character that people would want to see in this park. So again, almost as a similar strategy to the benches, I think part of what we could be providing with the park management plan would be a range of fence types that would suit specific areas of the park.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. Councillor Day.
Thank you. So one of the issues that I have certainly run into a great deal when we talk about accessibility is what exactly that looks like or feels like or is going to mean for participants with access challenges. So I'm just very curious how we would improve accessibility at Lookout Lake or Ocean View Park that would actually work for people with disabilities. Did you have specific upgrades in mind for access?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. For Lookout Lake, I don't think it's reasonable to assume that the nature trail could be made fully accessible, just given the impact that that would have on kind of the surrounding environment, as well as the grades that are there. It would require significant regrading. But the thought would be that we would be trying to ease some of the slopes around the dam areas to potentially get you a portion of the way. So making the connections between the dam upgrades and the nature trail eased. Even when I walk them now, it feels a little bit precarious. So just for a greater range of abilities. And then also looking at creating more fully accessible access to the water. With the dam slope at the degree that it is, it can be a bit challenging for people to get down to the lake. So looking at strategies to regrade off of the dam on the east side so that folks with mobility challenges or potentially even in wheelchairs could be accessing from that lower point. At Ocean View Park, to me, accessibility is really about integrating more play opportunities for a wider range. So right now the playground is a little bit more traditional in terms of its features and fixtures, and I think there's lots of opportunity at that park to expand upon that, as well as add some additional trail connections in and around the main area within the park there that potentially could be paved or more flat for those with mobility challenges. So
I don't know what happened there, but I just lost you briefly. I was particularly interested in if you had considered any accessible parking at Olympic View.
What Ocean View? Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's something we can definitely look into further as part of phase 3. Getting into the details a little bit more about how the parking areas are working related to the existing fencing, as well as potentially adding some further south on Marianne Crescent. So thanks for mentioning that. We'll look into that further for sure.
Great, and I know that the Intermunicipal Advisory Committee on Disability Issues would be really happy to provide input. We have quite a diverse range of users involved with that committee, including those who work at group homes, as well as people who have individual disabilities. And they have also worked with the David Suzuki Foundation on the pollinator gardens, been working on that since last summer. So there may be information and opportunities that could help.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much, Councillor Day. I just have, just to wrap it up, I have 3 questions and they're not tough. They're sort of tougher questions. But I guess my first question has to do with, sorry, I like that smile of yours. But my first question is, are you concerned about the number of survey responses? Because from my first year stats course, which is 40 years ago, just the number of people that are responding, we don't even make the bare minimum. We should be getting around 350 to 375 responses, if I did my calculations correctly, just to get a 95% confidence level, plus or minus 5%. So, we're close with the Colwood Creek. You can almost say, yeah, we're almost there, but the other responses are so poor. So does that concern you? That's question number 1. My second question is phase 3 is when you do rough order magnitude costs. So we know what all these, that's correct, right? Okay. And my third question is, I guess it's more to staff, is when are we looking at implementing this? Should we decide to go forward with this? That's my 3 questions.
So, Mr. Chair, with the magnitude cost, part of the draft management plans that will be offered in Q1 of next year will include a Class D estimate of output. So that's where the rough magnitude costs will be coming. I'm just trying to remember back to what your first question was here that I noted down.
That's just if you're concerned about the survey responses or the lack thereof, I should say.
Not so much. The Colwood Creek is by far the most regionally used of the 3. So we did have quite a few response both in person and in survey. With the others, they were smaller. However, we did notice for Lookout Lake that almost every single person who lives around the lake somehow participated, whether they came and visited us at the pop-ups or if they provided the surveys. These are also all on the heels of our year-long Parks and Rec management plan process that we undertook through 2020 and 21. And so it was nice to see that the answers are still the same now as they were a year ago when we did this citywide thing. So though it does look as if some of the overall numbers are low, they really just targeted specific neighborhoods is what we have found is who's come out and offered input and support. So for instance, with Ocean View, which also did seem quite low, it was really the neighborhood that vote. We didn't have anybody come to the Ocean View events that was, say, from the Royal Bay area, because they don't really use the park very much. And then besides all of the survey responses and pop-up events, we have reached out to about approximately 50 different stakeholder groups who use the various parks. So from daycare considerations to other groups and such, that have also provided input to help shape these plans. So the numbers do look low, but they're really, think of them within just that specific neighborhood context, because that's who's really come out to offer comment and support through here. And as for the implementation piece, you will start to expect to see some implementation options coming up through budget cycles moving forward.
Great, thank you very much. Great job. And that's it. See you later. Thank you. Okay, so we'll, moving on to the next item on the agenda, 5.2. That's the development variance permit for 2231 Souq Road. And Kelsey is going to introduce the subject. Go ahead, Kelsey.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to quickly share my screen. Okay. Does that look okay?
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
So agenda item 5.2 is a development variance permit for 2231 Souq Road. The applicant is requesting a relaxation to the front yard setback, exterior side yard setback, and a reduced parking requirement to construct a 2-story office commercial building. The applicant is proposing to vary section 7.2.051 to reduce the front yard setback from 4.5 meters to 0.93. Section 7.2.052C to reduce the exterior side yard setback from 4.5 to 2.5. And section 2.201 to reduce the required parking spots from 28 to 26 for office multi-tenant. To support the variance, the applicant is proposing a 1.57 meter road dedication to enable the goals of the transportation master plan along Souq Road. 2231 Souq Road at the corner of Souq and Heatherly is zoned community commercial in the OCP land use designation neighborhood center. The site was previously a fueling and vehicle repair facility, which was then decommissioned in 2020. A certificate of compliance from the BC Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Strategy will also be required, confirming all site remediation. The lands are designated neighborhood center, which supports small-scale mixed-use centers. The property is also along the transit growth network, which is supportive of walking, cycling, and enhanced public realm. There are 3 main design guidelines that provide consideration to reduce both the front and side yard setback. They include 1, buildings that are oriented toward the street and parking is located behind the building. Those are the first 2 guidelines that you see there. Number 2 is where landscaping and public art are prominent. That's the 3rd guideline. And number 3 is where buildings can create a new built line. That's the 4th guideline that you see there. The property is zoned C2, encouraging mixed use with neighborhood serving intent. The applicant is proposing a multi-tenant office building with the parking calculation determined at 1 space per 30 square meters for office multi-tenant. The total requirement is 28 spaces. The applicant is requesting a reduction of 2 spots to 26. This request is supported by Watt Consulting Group, as their report suggests the parking demand will be 22. The zone also allows for a 4.5 meter front yard setback if the area between the front of the building line and the lot line is landscaped. The proposal of a 0.93 meter front yard setback is based off of a 1.57 meter road dedication along Souq Road to enable that transportation master plan. There's also extensive landscaping on the corner of Heatherly Road with a public art component. Further, the C2 zone notes that on a corner lot, a side yard is up to 4.5 meters if the area is landscaped. The landscaping plan shows extensive plantings at the corner of Souq and Heatherly, and also a 2.5 meter green strip to the parking lot. The applicant's architect has situated the proposed 2-story building to align with key design intent for the OCP. The front yard setback reduction will create active frontage as desired in the OCP guidelines and neighborhood center. If the variances are approved, a Section 219 covenant securing that 1.57 meters of road dedication is to be registered on title, or a road dedication survey will be supplied and registered on title. The siting of the building and road dedication allows for parking to be located behind the building. However, it does limit the number of spaces to 26. As noted previously, the Watt consulting study concluded the expected demand will be 22 stalls. The overall proposal meets the intent of the OCP to create a strong street frontage and is supported by transit. This proposal will also create improvements along Souq Road with surface upgrades, a buffered bike lane, a landscape strip, and a sidewalk, all to the Transportation Master Plan standard. Furthermore, along Heatherly Road, 4 new parallel on-street parking spots have been proposed. And the applicant is also proposing 16 bike spaces, which is 10 more than the 6 required. As per the requirement of the Local Government Act, the applicant posted a development notification sign in September, and letters were mailed to residents within 75 meters of the property. The applicant is here tonight to answer any questions you may have. To conclude, the proposed 0.93 meter front yard and 2.5 exterior setback and parking requirements reduced from 28 to 26 is to enable a strong building frontage along Souq Road. A reduced front yard setback to 0.93 will provide road dedication to achieve the desired Souq Road cross section. The 4.5 to 2.5 meter side yard setback adds extensive landscaping with a public art component along Heatherly Road. Committee may consider recommending to council the following options: approve DVP 21012 to permit the front yard setback, exterior side yard setback, and a reduction of parking spots with the condition of DVP issuance until the property owner registers a 219 covenant or the road dedication plan. Committee may also wish to recommend to council deferring the application or denying. Thank you for your time. I'm happy to provide more information if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll first ask Councillor Parkinson.
I'd be prepared to move option 1.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'll open it up for discussion. Councillor Jensen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we could just get clarity, the reduced setback on the Souq Road side allows for what specific cross section for Souq Road? Does that account for the potential high occupancy vehicle lane or the bus lane that is anticipated in the near future?
Thank you very much for the question. I think I'll pass it on to Brent, who's on the line here.
Thank you very much. Through the chair to Councillor Jensen, the cross section that's enabled is a 30-meter cross section, and engineering will be bringing that full Souq Road corridor to council in 2022 to overview it. It would account for an HOV lane if that is the council wish. Thank you.
You good with that?
That was good. Was that a yes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. And I heard.
What's that? You gotta push yourself back on. And then I'll put you on here. Sorry. Oh, I know how to do it now.
A lot of buttons.
Go ahead.
And just one further question, Kelsey, you went over it very quickly, but did I hear, I wrote it down when you said it, public art, question mark.
Yes, that's right.
Somewhere?
Yes, Chair to council, yes, that's right. So on the Heatherly Road side, the applicant has noted that they're reviewing a public art component I believe they may wish to speak to that later this evening.
Yeah, that sounds great. I wrote it down because I thought I heard it, but I wasn't 100% sure. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Councillor Day.
Thank you. If the applicant is online, I wonder if they could speak to the neighborhood art.
I wonder if, hi, this is Rachel Sansom. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Committee. I will ask perhaps Mr. Todd Mazouk to speak to the public art component, or perhaps Rob Pringle, our architect.
Hi, thanks, Rachel. It's Todd Mazouk speaking. As we know, the traditional Indigenous lands that front Rural Roads University are both Songhees and Esquimalt Nation based, and I work with a bunch of Indigenous communities and involved in a bunch of Indigenous business. And in some historical work we've done and worked with young students, people learning the craft of their local heritage art. And so we're proposing about an 8x12 image of an Indigenous natured image that would be placed on the side of the building with some uplighting that is nicely draped with quite a large landscaped area. It's probably in the vicinity of about 6,000 square feet of nicely vegetated area that is on that heatherly side, and then the imagery is behind it. And Kelsey, I'm not sure, you do have an image of this. I'm not sure if you have it at your direct access to share with council.
Yeah, I will just, I will bring it up one moment.
Have I answered your questions, Councillor Day, through the chair?
Yes, I'm sorry. I was just waiting for Kelsey. I thought she was bringing up the image.
There, I think she has it there now.
There, this is the image that I have from the site plan. This is just what it would potentially look like behind the landscaping.
Okay, thank you. And I noticed when I was reviewing the plans that the accessible parking is at the very far corner of the parking lot, which it can be much easier for accessible participants to have a closer parking stall to the doorway. Is there a plan for the accessibility of the building?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, thank you for the question. That was brought up during staff evaluation. I understand from an architect's point of view that putting the disability parking closer to the building would be a further reduction in parking. And so to mitigate that, that they have made the parking stall wider, and it will be reviewed at the time of the development permit further.
Okay. And I'm just curious, I understand that the zoning is tied to being neighborhood serving. And I'm just curious how this building serves this neighborhood.
Through the chair to Councillor Day, thank you for the question. I understand that the intent is multi-tenant office. I'm happy to pass it over to the applicant to describe further.
Hi, yeah, sorry, Rachel Sansom again. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Committee. To answer the question, we expect it's a 4-unit multi-tenant commercial building. We already have a couple of tenants tied up. technical jobs. People are really looking forward to all the accessibility, access to transportation and cycling, and that nice little commercial corner. So it's sort of hopefully a catalyst to bring more commercial to that area of town.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor Baxter.
I think this will be a huge improvement over what's there right now, and moves us firmly in the direction the OCP has set for us. So I'll be supporting this motion.
Thanks very much, Councillor Baxter. Just a last question, Kelsey. You said something that I didn't catch in the reading, and that was they're going to provide 2 parking spaces, on-street parking spaces. Is that what I heard?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that's accurate. I apologize for speaking too fast, but yes, there will be 4 on-street parallel parking spots on Heatherly.
Okay, thank you very much. So at this point in time, seeing no other questions here, I'll call the question then. All those in favor of the motion? Okay, and it's unanimous. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Rob, Todd, and Rachel. Okay, we're going to move on to 5.4 because 5.3 was deleted, and that's to discuss the development variance permit for 681 Allendale, Lot B. And Desiree Givens, if you could introduce the item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to share my screen. Are you able to see my screen okay? Okay, so this item in your agenda is for a development variance permit application for 681 Allendale Road. This is to reduce the required number of parking from 183 spaces to 119. This development variance application will support the applicant's proposal to develop a 5-building commercial retail space. This will consist of 2 fast food drive-through restaurants, as well as 2,000 square meters of commercial retail space. The property is located at the intersection of Allendale Road and Veterans Memorial Parkway. It is zoned as a mixed-use employment center, one zone, and it is also designated as mixed-use employment center in the official community plan. The lot has a total area of approximately 13,000 square meters. It is currently vacant, and the lands were previously part of a mining operation and were blasted in 2019. This created a relatively flat parcel of land, and there's a grade difference of approximately 16 meters or 52 feet between the property and the adjacent property at the south. Just for context, the nearest bus stop to the property is about a 2-minute walk away. To the north, that's the number 52 bus, which provides connections to Colwood Exchange and Laneford Exchange. So in the land use bylaw, there's off-street parking regulations based on use. So for a development, for this development specifically, a drive-through restaurant would require 15 spaces per restaurant. The applicant is proposing 2 drive-through restaurants, so 30 spaces are required. For the retail use, the required amount of parking is based on total gross floor area. For the subject property, which has a retail gross floor area of 2,039 square meters, the required number of parking spaces is 153 spaces. So this brings the total required parking to 183 spaces. The subject property is designated as mixed-use employment center in the official community plan. The development aligns with the designation as it will result in redevelopment of a brownfield site. It will support a workplace focus by bringing in commercial uses, and it will manage the scale, use, and intensity as it's located next to residential properties. Regarding the parking variance, a committee may wish to consider that the OCP includes a policy
to update the parking standards for new developments to prevent an oversupply of parking. The off-street parking bylaw is currently being updated and is going to be referenced in this presentation. It was also reviewed by the applicant's consultant. To support their variance request, the applicant has provided a parking study prepared by Watt Consulting. The parking study looks at the reviews similar uses and for commercial and retail sites in urban and suburban settings across North America. It's also based off of the Transportation Engineers Parking Generation Manual, which calculates parking demand rates based off of observations of actual sites. So the recommended rates are shown here on the slide. They suggest a minimum of 106 spaces be provided for a development such as this one. And as mentioned, the study also reviews the standards that were proposed in the draft parking bylaw. So this slide shows a comparison of the standards of the amount of parking that would be required based off of the draft parking bylaw, the current parking bylaw, and what is being proposed. So according to the draft parking bylaw, a total of 83 spaces would be required. According to the current bylaw, 183 spaces are required, and the applicant is proposing somewhere in the middle. They're proposing 119 spaces. This is 13 more spaces than what was recommended by Watt Consulting. As per the Local Government Act, the applicant has posted a development notice sign on the site in early November, and we've also mailed out notifications to neighbors within 75 meters of the site in late November. So staff would like to recommend that committee consider recommending to council one of the following options. So option one would be to approve the development variance permit, which would have the effect of reducing the total required parking from 183 spaces to 119. Option two is to defer the application for further information. And option three is to deny the development variance permit application. Thank you for your time. I'm be happy to answer any questions, and I will note that the applicant is also here tonight to answer any questions that you may have.
Voltage charger will be provided? Or what level?
Through the chair to the councillor, the provision is between 100 and 150 kV, and the allowance on there is 5 units per building for a total of 25.
Right, that's 5 units per building.
Correct.
And they're 110 volt.
100 to 150 kV, kilovolts. The standard, that is just the standard within the system currently. Actually, that's a little bit higher, actually.
So is that a level 3?
That would be a minimum of a level 2.
Okay. That's great. Then I'd like to move option 1 with one amendment, an additional 10 short-term bike slots for the site.
Ken? You said, okay. Did you get that? Okay, so we'll have the discussion. Oh, okay, so I'm gonna have to cancel everybody here. Yeah, no, it's not wrong again.
No, it's not an amendment.
No?
It was the motion.
Oh, yeah, that's right, because we haven't had, okay, no, that's fine. Got it. Okay, got it. Thank you very much. Understood. Councillor Jensen.
Thank you. A couple things. First off, I would like to hear from Councillor Baxter on what that looks like. Is that a painted line? Is that a rack? Is that a one of the secure containers you see at the bus station? Like, what does that look like in your mind?
Almost universally, they're just bike racks. And the argument for it is that the proposal is to move a long way from the current bylaw towards, but not all the way to towards the proposed bylaw in car parking spaces. So the extra 10 bike spaces just does the same thing, only for bike spaces instead of car spaces.
Councillor Jansen?
Yeah, thank you for the clarity. And, I'm supportive. That sounds just fine to me, but I had a couple of thoughts and or questions. I'm going to have to wait and see how I feel about the parking. But the part that I find troublesome is that once again, we're considering some notional parking numbers from a yet to be considered future potential bylaw. And it's being presented to us in reports, and it's being quoted by the traffic consultants. And I find that problematic because I can't give that any weight. It doesn't resonate with me because we haven't had that discussion yet. So it's another example where I believe the vehicle is coming before the parking spot, for an appropriate metaphor. So that's just a comment. But another comment is that I am gobsmacked when I see how popular the Skip the Dishes and the Uber Eats is. And I was reminded that again the other night when I was working. But can we speak a little bit for fast food outlets? It is like a moth to a light bulb as far as these Skip the Dishes drivers. And I've seen mayhem caused by lineups of Skip the Dishes drivers trying to grab their food and go at some of these local outlets, specifically more in town. But I would love to know what kind of thought has been put in that by the traffic engineer or the proponent.
Through the chair, I would like to answer that question specifically. It's probably not challenge staff to bring the site plan back up, but I believe that councillors do in fact have the site plan in front of them, and I'd get you to refer to page 7, which is a page immediately after the staff report. We did actually specifically address this in this particular challenge in 2 ways. The big advantage we had, of course, is this is albeit a brownfield site. Thank you, staff. So I take you to the top of building A. We'll deal with building A first. We actually have a total of 24 stalls that are designed to be able to accommodate the pickup through here. In this particular franchise, this is the method that they choose to deliver their, whether it be Skip the Dishes or Uber Eats, etc. And the second one is in this area immediately adjacent to lot A, which is a C-span. We've again incorporated, got the traffic out of the traffic flow by bringing the traffic into the north-south lane, because the point that the councillor brought up is a very valid point, but this was dealt with very clearly by both our own internal architects, as you can tell by all the lines running around the site showing turning radii, etc. And it's key to us as the owners of this facility. This facility operate appropriately from day one. We're not in a position where we're trying to put something on Government Street. We've had the opportunity to be able to plan this project from a blank sheet of paper, and we believe that we've what we've brought into play here is a design that actually reflects what we are seeing, which is the increase in pickup requirements.
So I appreciate that. And sorry, our version is quite small and my eyes are not good enough to pick up some of those finite details. But I love the fact that you have designed with that in mind. So I think that's it for now. Thank you, Councillor Kobayashi, and I'll wait to hear what some of my peers have to say.
Thank you very much. Before I decide who's going to speak next, Michael, were you going to just respond to something, or are you bringing up another point? Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you. Can I start with a question? And that's the retail nature of the site. Just what's envisioned by that? I thought, Allendale lands were I've always considered to be sort of the employment center. And I'm just wondering, are we talking shoe stores here, or are we talking, hoses for industrial equipment or something?
Through the chair to the councillor, this is essentially commercial retail. I'm sure council will appreciate. I am going to tell you that we are 50% pre-leased at this juncture, and while I'm not at liberty to give you specifics of the actual corporations or companies that are coming in, I can tell you that we have a complete mixture. Everything from personal services to liquor distribution, as well as food service, and also medical dental. So the only thing that we haven't had an opportunity on here at this point is, if I would call it grocery service, I guess. So we've had significant interest in this site. And the principal reason being is the Allendale district. We were lucky enough to have been able to get 20 acres of the property, which is in 4 lots. As council are well aware, we've gone through the rezoning process on all the properties where it was required. And we now have C-SPAN, which will be making a fairly major announcement this coming Thursday. And also we have the Carson Automotive Group, who are doing the first phase of their project across the road. And our own Lot C, where we have purely industrial small bay facilities, of which 30% is pre-leased. So what we have found is that there's significant interest in the employment side, and you have a lot of people, and this became the focus, if you will, of providing the other services that come with having employees and having those services within a reasonable travel distance. So that led to the design that you see. This is essentially the design that was rezoned, approved rezoning rather, in November 20. At that time, we actually had 36,000 feet of commercial retail, and that has been reduced to the approximately 28,000 that you see now, for a couple of principal reasons. One was we wanted to be able to provide a really positive look from along Veterans Memorial Parkway. Working with staff, we've been able to come up with a design that has no parking, no visible cars along the Veterans, with screening, etc. We brought all of that internally, and to provide a reasonable mixed use, so you do have the smaller retail units down to 1,200, 1,500 square feet, none of which are available within a fairly significant distance of all the employment services that are being brought to this site.
Thank you for that. And I guess I'm comforted to know that you're dealing with I'll call them the big boys, the people who know what makes their businesses work. because I'm not very happy with the traffic report, the parking report. I mean, it talks about, well, under the, as Councillor Jansen points out, the not yet approved but proposed parking bylaw. If we take an urban center calculation to what we may have here, an urban center to me, the last application had, a shopping center across the way, a church up the road, places for overflow parking. Perhaps there is no place for overflow parking here. And our existing bylaw says we want 15 spaces for each fast food restaurant. I see the Institute of Traffic Engineers. I think they're up to 20 spaces for one of the fast food restaurants. It's hard to picture. I think that the fast food would be building A, and the end of building D, I think it is, would be the fast foods. And you start counting, the 15 or 20 spots near them, and then you see they're sort of spilling out. So if you go 30,000 feet and say, here's the project and here's the total number of parking spaces, and look at works. If you go to each individual building and say, what does this building need and where is it? I'm guessing the ones along the is at the south property line. There doesn't seem to be any accesses to building E in that area, so those are probably, call those the overflow or building parking, but nobody's going to park there and walk to building A. So I hear you. It's your project. You're dealing with people who should understand what they're getting into, and it's not like they're going to spill out and park on Veterans Memorial Parkway if there's not enough parking. They're just going to go somewhere else. So I guess I'm concerned about the parking. I like the project. I like the site. I'm happy that you're doing something. I hope it works well for you. But I am troubled by the parking. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Baxter.
Just to hopefully alleviate everybody's concerns about the parking, and somewhat backing up what Councillor Parkinson's already said. This is a sophisticated developer and a sophisticated team of advisors to the developer. And there is absolutely no way that they're going to create sites with insufficient parking, because they will not get tenants able to pay the big bucks that they obviously want to make on this if they don't have enough parking. So I'm completely assured by the fact that these people know how to run their business a lot better than we do, and that they will ensure there's enough parking in order to ensure their profitable position. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Michael. Any other? Okay, I guess I get last say. No, Councillor Day.
Okay, you could have gone next too. I just think in fairness, I have to speak up that I'm not really thrilled to be getting another two more drive-through restaurants in our community. I guess they're kind of important, when we have busy schedules and things, but that's not anything that I feel is going to put Colwood on the map. So I'm just saying it out loud to give the developer or staff the opportunity to disabuse me of the notion that's not helpful to us. But I just thought I should put my cards on the table. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Day. Respect what you say. I guess my question is that, the one thing I just want to make a generic comment here. Actually, it's more of a comment. And I guess what I am getting, a red herring is being kept on being thrown at us right now. And that's this new parking standard, that's out there. And it hasn't been approved. It hasn't been reviewed by this council. I don't even know why we make the comparisons, frankly. I really don't. It just confuses the heck out of me. And not only that, then there's another consultant report, the Watt report, which has even got a higher number. So, I scratch my head. So it's confusing to me. And I don't think it's because it's confusing the heck out of me. I don't think it's serving us well by we continuously put up that new standard, which has not been approved or reviewed. So I think it's just fake news, if I want to call it that. But but that's how I personally feel about it. So just the Watt report and the other one, that's fine. That comparison that came up. But like I said, until I see it, and if that's more of a incentive to get that thing done and over with and reviewed and finally approved, then so be it. But I just wanted to make that comment at this point in time, because it is very confusing. And I guess I think very much like what some of the comments have been said tonight, businesses will know their businesses. They're not going to put their business in there if they don't have enough parking. And the one nice thing about this whole thing, that why I'm not too fussed about voting this down, is because it's not actually, we don't have to compete with residential parking in this area. It's all commercial, which is kind of a nice thing. So on that note, that's all I have to say. It's just more of a comment than anything else. So at this point in time, I'm going to call the question. Could you just repeat the motion that Councillor Baxter had put out?
Do you want me to repeat the entire
Yes,
of number
please.
one?
Yes, please.
So the recommendation is that committee recommend to council one of the following options, which we've selected one: development variance permit DBP 21015 for the lands at 681 Allendale Road, which would have the effect of varying section 2.2 of the land use bylaw 151 by reducing the total required number of off-street parking spaces from 183 to 119 for restaurant and retail uses, and the addition of 10 short-term bike slots for the sites be approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Parkinson.
Although it was Councillor Baxter's motion, I believe it was an additional 10 bike spots. I think there were some proposed already. It's a 10 additional over what was already proposed.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks for that clarification. I understand that. That's exactly what I heard, actually. Okay, call the question. All those for the motion. Okay, and against? And Councillor Day is against. Okay, thank you very much. And on that note, I'm going to ask for a motion for adjournment. Councillor Logan, we got to give it to you. Thank you very much. See you in a couple weeks. Oh, what's that? No.
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.